Welcome to the LFG Pats Pod with your hosts, Joe and Mike. Let's go!
All right, welcome into the LFG Pats Pod with Joe and Mike. I'm Joe, and I think this is still Mike, right?
Indeed, for today, yeah.
Check.
Indeed.
All right, so we have a very special guest today, Paul Sorensen. So he's an EWU broadcaster. He's been watching Efton Chism, the ex-darling, receiver darling from OTAs.
Our guy.
So we're going to talk about him a lot. He's also been blessed to watch Lan Larison and Kyle Williams. So he's been looking at these guys for years now. He's got a lot to say about it. So we're going to jump into that. But first, we're going to talk about our sponsors real quick. So Rogue Island Kitchen and Bar. So if you're in the arcade in Providence and you want some good, craft beers, you want some new American cuisine, go check it out. Ask for Ryan. He's the owner. He's my buddy. Our other sponsor is Impact Brand and Marketing. So they're in Cumberland, Rhode Island. John DiDonato, he's the man. If you need shirts, hats, mugs, you name it, this guy's the guy. So John DiDonato.
Swag forthcoming from Mr. DiDonato.
Which Paul Sorensen, you will get some of that swag. Don't worry.
Absolutely.
And as they said, The Departed, down Providence way, huh?
Oh, yeah.
So
Come from down Providence. That's us. We're those guys.
It was funny. We were doing the roster projections, and I was like, oh, The Departed.
Yeah.
Anyways.
We're the redheaded stepchild of the Boston community, but we own it and embrace it, so we love it.
So throwing it to you, Paul. How is it over there? I know it's quite far away.
I love the LFG, large fat guys. That's a nice moniker there. Congratulations, as opposed to the other one when you first started. So, no,
is that right?
You look at the guys that New England's had in the slot over the years, whether it's Amendola or Edelman or Welker, or whoever you could throw in there. They've had awesome success, from that perspective, and that's the nice thing about scouting now in this country, in terms of what New England can do. They can come out and find guys like Efton Chism, who's, kind of an under radar kind of guy who just runs great routes, catches the football, is tough to guard. He's got good twitch. He's one of the nicest people you'd ever want to meet. You couldn't ask for a nicer human. Smart kid, great family.
It's about him. So it's been pretty great, the feedback we've gotten from Efton's parents. We're going to try to get them on the show at some point, too.
Sure. They're great folks. They're on the west side. Monroe, Washington is where they came out of, and had a chance to meet them a couple times when they'd come to the games in Cheney, Eastern Washington. So I think you guys got a great one, and you got one that probably should have gotten drafted. So you got a little under the radar dude. Same thing with Larison. Larison's another guy that's a stud, that basically was a freaking rodeo guy when he was growing up. So, he's got a little toughness to him and was an absolute beast. He rushed for almost 300 yards against us in less than 3 quarters and then blew his knee. So he would have had probably a 500-yard day because they, Washington or Eastern Washington couldn't stop him to save their life. He just ended up getting hurt, and the Eagles came back and won the game because their best guy went out and couldn't play anymore. So that
he looks like he's absolutely electric with the ball in his hands. His movement skill when he gets the ball, his yak yards, it's just second to none. The way that he jukes people out, makes people miss, and makes people guess wrong at the stem of their routes. I'm sure that's something that you've seen time and time again. Could you speak to that about how shifty he is?
Well, and that's what will make him a good punt returner too. And that's one thing I think New England has utilized their slot guys with. They try to get him into special team stuff, returning punts, maybe kickoffs, coverage guys, those kinds of things. So his wiggle, he's got a low center of gravity. He's really strong lower body wise. And it's tough because, you see a guy with his size, he doesn't look like he can have a lot of wiggle, but he just does a great job of getting off the jam, making people miss. And then when he gets open and he has a couple of yards between you and the defender, those folks end up with their shorts around their ankles half the time because he does such a good job of wiggling out of tackles.
Yeah, it's amazing. You watch his film and you're just looking at him and saying, this guy's Julian Edelman. He's a spitting image. He's got that low center of gravity. He's got, those big thighs. This guy makes violent cuts, and it's really exciting. And obviously we have a guy like Pop Douglas, very similar guy, quick, twitchy, a little smaller frame. But I think he's in the same kind of mold, and I think both can really coexist, to be honest.
Sure.
Well, you could put one on either side, one in, the slot. You move guys around. You can have a tray set, and don't forget about Kendrick Bourne. He's another Eagle as well, who's had himself a nice NFL career. And Eastern's turned out some pretty damn good wide receivers, over the years. And all you have to do is throw a guy by the name of Cooper Kupp in there, and
yeah,
you have the greatest.
That's something there.
Greatest
But you did scout. You covered Kendrick Bourne when he was there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was great. I love that guy. What a personality that dude has.
Oh,
And-
he's through the roof. His character is absolutely through the roof. Could you give me a quick scout breakdown of him from when he was in college? Was he more of a Z guy, or was he more of a slot guy, or what was his?
No, he was more of an outside receiver. But one thing Eastern does is they teach you to play all the positions. So he can move inside, move outside. The coordinators are good at utilizing their talent. And the same thing with Efton. They would move Efton around because people would game plan to try to, double bracket him with a backer or a safety in a corner. So they'd put him in motion. They'd start him, on the outside, bring him in. They'd start him in the slot. He'd start in the backfield. They did a lot of stuff. Kendrick was the same way. He could play any one of his positions, but he was more of your guy that was your, get down the field, try to make some plays over the top, extend the defense kind of thing, where Efton was more of your inside slot, true slot guy that really caused some problems. And Eastern couldn't block anybody last year. So they had to get rid of the ball quick. And guess who that ball went to? About 64% of all the completions went to Efton. The entire year, he was getting 6.5 out of 10 passes his direction because he was open.
For sure. That actually ties into the next thing I was going to ask you, because what I've noticed is that they made a very concerted effort to scheme him open and to get him the ball in space. On those swing routes, on the bubble screens, on the quick digs, the slants, all of that stuff, to allow him the opportunity to make a play after he gets the football. So that's basically a byproduct of the rest of the offense, is that they had to do that way.
Yep. And, the nice thing about OTOs, which they're going through right now, because it's such a brain dump, trying to know all the technology, or the terminology and all the different things that are going on, from the perspective of the receivers in the offense, because it's different than what they've been dealing with, in college. And so this is an important period, not necessarily on the physical side, but really on the mental side and the relationships with the quarterbacks, starting to get a feel. And you'll see the QBs will start zeroing in on guys that they like to throw to. And it wouldn't surprise me that Efton's the guy that's going to get the majority of the stuff, along with Kyle Williams, because those guys are explosive. They catch the football and they make you look good after the catch. And that's what a receiver needs to do.
Absolutely. Those are the two guys. Those are our two OTA darlings of the whole Patriots roster right now, is Kyle Williams and Efton Chism. They're both working with, now there's a couple guys that are out, but the point is they're both working with the first team, and they're both already carving out roles. Kyle Williams is being used exclusively as an X, which I know he has versatility, but I love the fact that they're keeping him at X, because I think he excels there. Just the way that he can get over the top of people and trick people, get separation, and come back on his stems and whatnot. And then for Chisholm, they're keeping him in the slot, obviously, but he has an uncanny ability to find his spot, particularly in zone defenses. He knows when to sit down, he knows when to move across, and he knows the spacing very well. Did he deal with a bunch of zone defenses when he was playing there?
No, they game planned him pretty hard. So he was always getting double teamed, where he was going from, and he still had the year that he had.
Oh yeah, because it was a focal point.
But they must have moved him around the formation.
Well, they did. Yeah, they moved him. They put him in motion. They moved him all over the place, and it really made it interesting. A good old downtown Spokane, our little fentanyl fest. We have about 5 of these a day coming by, unfortunately. So sorry about that.
No worries. Hey, we're hitting audio issues. We got fire alarm. We're being tested very well over here. I like it.
We're good.
Jeez. It's almost like the Jets are trying to get in here and screw things up. What the heck?
No kidding. So just real quick, I just want to show a quick Efton Williams little high rep. Efton Chism's got it. Efton Williams.
Well, that's a hybrid. It's a combo of the two guys. I like that.
Yeah, it's good combo. But I want to show a quick highlight in case anyone hasn't seen these guys. Take a look real quick. I mean, good Lord. That last catch where he high pointed it with one hand and then looked at the guy on the ground like, oh, this guy is he's that mean, like gritty. I keep saying Julian Edelman, and people are going to get sick of it. But
did you see how many people it took to bring him down? There wasn't a single guy that the first shot he had on him brought him to the ground, and Efton mossed that dude on that last play, which is great. And that's exactly what I said, in the broadcast, because he went up, that ball was overthrown. Kakov Asparis, who's the quarterback, he ended up transferring out because of the NIL. They go get money somewhere else. That's another story. But again, it just was a great catch by him. He hurdled multiple people. He basically made it hard. I mean, if you were one-on-one with him, most likely you weren't going to tackle him. And that's a special thing. And that's a guy that if he can stay low and he can find his spots, and that's what the defenses are going to try to take away. They're going to show one thing, jump on other stuff. You saw there's always going to be holding. They're always going to be pushing and shoving. You got to be physical. Because defensive backs, we don't have a lot of, love out there now. We can't, punish guys all the way down the field like we could back in our day. So you got 5 years to make your move, and then you got to play basically one-on-one basketball and try to defend these guys. And if the ball's thrown in the spot where you got no chance, that receiver's going to make the catch. You just got to make the tackle, and it makes it tough.
Yeah, NFL loves offense, so it's skewed toward that way.
And I watched his some of his high school tape today. I'm like Googling, let me see what's out there. I'm looking at his high school tape. He's taking RPOs from under center, from shotgun, taking RPO. I mean, I could totally see Josh McDaniels having packages for him. Not, maybe not a lot of packages in the year one, but I could see them making some kind of gadgety kind of plays with him because he's just electric. Like you said, the first guy's not going to tackle him. And
you can't coach that. Making the first guy miss is an uncoachable trait. Either you have the instinct or you don't. Now, what you do after that, maybe that is a coachable thing, but you can't. That shifty and elusiveness, you can't coach that. And he has it in spades.
Exactly. All right, Paul, I want to hear about you as a player. You played free safety. I know you're in the Hall of Fame at WSU. And just tell me what it was like playing for WSU back in 80, 81.
Well, we actually had a conference. So we were the Pac-2 now. We were the Pac-10 back then. But, it was fun. I was a junior college transfer. I came in out of California. I played the Gold Gate Conference. Diablo Valley College, it's not exactly a, pantheon for turning out football players. But, yeah, it worked out good. And, I needed the extra 2 years to get bigger and faster and rolled in and started. I was actually a corner. I played both ways in junior college where I was a running back and a corner. Turned punts and kickoffs, did all that stuff.
Early Travis Hunter right here.
Yeah, the
no.
Come on, give yourself some credit.
No, I was a bread and butter dude, man. I did not have Travis's flash. By the way, Kyle Williams scorched his ass 2 years ago up in Poland.
I saw.
That was
I don't know if you saw that highlight, but that sent a little message to that Colorado team.
I enjoyed it.
And Kyle, I'm sure, is not going to let you forget that. In fact, Cam Ward scored Sanders when they were working out together, in the offseason, saying, hey, if anybody wants to see, you getting your crap kicked in, just come watch the Cougar highlights because we took you guys apart. So it was pretty cool. But, it was fun back then because we didn't have the RPOs. We didn't have a lot of the, the stuff. You could hide guys and do some things. And I was totally an intimidator. I tore people's heads off. Jack Tatum was my idol growing up. That's who I wanted to be. And we could tape our forearms up to about here and turn them into casts. And you could do a lot.
Were just a little bit different back then, where your head was your biggest asset. And believe me, back in the day, I used it as much as I often could.
Did they teach you the same way they taught me? You put forehead, you put nose through sternum. I mean, who tackles that right now? You
put it through the guy, not to the guy.
So now it's the rugby tackle. It's the eyes to the thigh and the alligator twist. And, that's no fun. I'd much rather go after a guy's head than his thigh because that hurts.
Yeah, big time. Yeah. It's a different world these days, my friend.
We had a good team. We ended up losing to Washington for the Pac-10 championship. We ended up going to the Holiday Bowl, played Brigham Young. They had a couple of guys who were pretty good by the name of Jim McMahon and Visek Ahema, who set the NFL punt return record. And they had Andy Reid was on that staff. Holmgren was on that staff.
Wow.
Lavelle Edwards was the head coach. They had 5 NFL head coaches on that BYU staff, and we lost 38-36 to them in San Diego in the Holiday Bowl.
So that was the Lavelle Edwards coaching tree?
Yes.
Really?
It's amazing.
And who came under that?
You had
Holmgren.
former head coach of the Raiders. You had Holmgren. You had Andy Reid. You had Chow. You had there was another guy that somewhere.
I think of him. He was what was he, a safety back in the day?
He was a wide receiver at punt return. He
that's right.
played for the Eagles for a bunch of years.
Yeah,
and, was pretty good. They had a guy named Gordon Hudson. He ran over me about 8 times in that game. Jeez, I had his footprints in the side of my head, for half the game. They were tough. They were dirty too. So we them as much as any game that I've ever been in. That's a team that we physically tried to hurt because they were salty.
Who knew those Mormons would get after us?
Yeah, but Jim McMahon's Catholic. I mean, what the heck is he going to freaking BYU for?
You were the devil, You were the devil.
They stick to their principles, but I digress.
So anyway, that was kind of fun. And then you go through the whole process. Back in the day, we didn't have a combine. So we had to go and we'd work out at 4 or 5 different locations. And they would bring, like the Niners would have 3 or 4 NFL teams, or you go to Dallas, or you go back to New York, and then they'd come in and run you in the off season. And I played then in the Holiday Bowl. After the Holiday Bowl, I played the Japan Bowl and the East-West Shrine Game. I got invited to the Senior Bowl and the Hula Bowl, but they were all on the same dates as those other two, so you had to kind of pick and choose.
Yeah.
And then you did a month worth of workouts where they would come in, they'd bring the DB coach in and the D coordinator and they're trainers, and they would just reef on your knees and your shoulders to see if you're going to fall apart and see if you had any decent footwork. And after that, then if you passed all that stuff, I was going off. I had no ACL, so I was playing with no anterior cruciates. And if they would have done the resonant, the full body scans that they do now for their physicals.
Oh boy,
it really was not a. I'm telling you right now, I would have been passing towels out. So it is what it is.
It is a different league these days.
It is. But it was fun, and it's like now, it's the same thing. I mean, you just have to change your game a little bit. You can't spear guys. You can't, you've got to be smart in terms of how you tackle. But basically, it's still the same thing. And that's the thing when you're going up against Joe Montana in practice. He was so good at being able to just throw to a spot and expecting his receivers to get there. Same thing Brady did. You look at the really good quarterbacks. Mahomes is the same way. He's got his, He's got guys that he knows he can get the football to if he throws it in a certain area. And I think that's the thing that these receivers, Williams and Chisholm and whoever else is out there, once they start figuring that out, once they start understanding the quarterbacks and the schemes, everything will start to slow down. Because right now it's a tornado between their ears. It's insane, all the stuff that you have to digest in a very short period of time. And you just want one coach to fall in love with you, because that coach has got to fight for you when it comes down to that final, 50.
Absolutely. And
there's a lot of good football players that are going to get cut that deserve to be on NFL rosters. So it is what it is.
It's an interesting point. The guys that they're working with Drake Maye, which I'm sure you know a little bit about that guy. And speaking what you just talked about, quarterback traits and whatnot, have you seen anything from Drake Maye, just like genuine, just covering him or covering his reports or his news? Do you have any takeaways from him that ought to be like not red flags or not super rose colored, but anything in general?
I'm not a big Patriots fan.
You can be honest.
I'm more of a Bengal and a Niner fan, because those are the guys who wrote the paychecks. But I will say this, the one thing that you do understand about quarterback play is it takes a certain acumen for those guys, because they have so many different checks, so many different things when they get to the line of scrimmage that they have to, dissect in a very short period of time. It's the same thing that we had. I'll just give you an example. You look at 2 franchises, Cincinnati Bengals, the San Francisco 49ers. We had Hank Bullock, who was a mad doctor of defense back in the day. We had 2,000 checks. I never knew what the hell I was doing. I was confused because everything, if you moved, if somebody slanted, if a guy did this, you had to do something else.
Every action is a reaction, basically.
Went to San Francisco, we had 3 checks. San Francisco beat the Bengals twice in the Super Bowl, and they played fast, and they had dudes because you didn't have to think. You just reacted and played. Great coaches will break down schemes and make it so it's simplistic for their teams to function, and to do what they do at a very, very high level. Now, it helped that you had some Hall of Famers with Ronnie Lott and, Eric Wright and a bunch of, there's the Niners and the Bengals had dudes. But again, simplifying, schemes is really a key thing. And for the rookies coming in, it's different than college. College, you'll welcome the freshman in because you're happy to have them on the deal. Well, here in the NFL, they don't want the competition because they're going to try to take your job.
That's my food out of my mouth.
You're taking my baby money away, man. So, I'm not giving you anything until you earn their respect. And once you get that, it. And it's a completely different deal inside the locker room. But it's a really interesting dynamic to kind of see going from where you are in high school to college and college to the pros, where the pro thing, it's a job. And you're not going to get a lot of love initially, especially if they don't think you can play.
Absolutely.
Especially because Drake had such a tough season last season, but now everybody's anointing him as a second coming and building him up with all these different roster guys. But we really don't know what that looks like yet, right? I mean, your non-answer told me everything I need to know about Drake Maye. Is that you think you might need?
There's not enough body of work out there for me to kind of.
Yeah. For example, they say that they compare him to Josh Allen. I think that's absolutely ridiculous.
That's not fair. That's not a fair comparison. You can't do that. He doesn't have the same setup as a Josh Allen. You just go back to the Drew Bledsoe days. Drew's another WSU Cougar, as a first pick. Got to play for Parcells, who treated him like dog crap. And of course that's the way it is.
I was there for that.
He's a 6'6" guy with a freaking hose that could throw it 80 yards if he had to, and could stand back there and took a beating, and I'm still pissed at the at the Patriots for not putting Drew back in after he was healthy, and then he had to come back in and bail you guys out to get you the Super Bowl when Brady got hurt, and Brady comes back and starts the Super Bowl and wins it. So anyway,
that's fantastic. That's great insight. I was there for that. I remember Drew getting picked first. I remember the Parcell years. I remember all of it. I loved that team. I loved Drew Bledsoe. He was frustrating at times because he holds the ball.
He does.
The guy he was a giant back there. He was the hardest guy to sack only because he was so big. He was like 6'5", 245, and he wouldn't go down.
He would get hit from the blind side. He'd be like, all right, he's done. No, wait, hold on.
And he would wait and then he would still get rid of it.
We call him the statue all the time.
I love that guy so much.
Well, and it was interesting you say that because the hit that he got hurt on, I think almost ruptured his kidney or liver.
It sheared a blood vessel.
Yeah, he almost bled to death internally. And then when he came back in that AFC Championship game, basically he got hit almost the same way and bounced right back and ran back in. And when I watched that, I went, okay, Drew's fine. He's ready.
He won that game.
He's a tough dude.
He won that game straight up, plain and simple. And we can say revisionist history now, knowing what we know. But back then, it was legitimately a question of why aren't you putting Bledsoe back in right now? I know this young kid is playing well and managing the team, but Bledsoe is the better talent. So why are you not putting him back in? We had debates about that all throughout that 2001 season. Drew was my guy. They had just re-signed him to a huge contract. Yep. I thought they should have given him a fair shake. But then retroactively, now that I see what happened, I can't complain too much. But at the time, I wasn't happy.
And that's the thing that practice gives you. And again, to defend Drew, the adage back in the day is if you got hurt, you were a starter, you got your job back when you were healthy. At least
those are old school rules, right?
And play, and then if you F things up, then basically they would move on and replace it. But he did not get that chance.
The Cardinals doesn't lose his job just because of an injury.
Yeah. Well, and it's the same way too. The NFL, the coaches are there, and they probably felt Brady was coming on. He was younger. He was more. And again, when you have a large contract with that, the job as an NFL guy is to try to get to that second contract. Because that's, how everything's slotted now, depending on if it's a 3 or 4 year deal, depending on where you're drafted, you're pretty much going to get a certain amount of dough. So you want to try to get to that second contract, and get that big paycheck. But then again, when it comes down to making tough decisions and you got two guys that are similar, but one guy's making $50 million, the other guy's making $18 million, guess what? What do you think is going to happen? They're going to figure out a way to jettison the $50 million dude. And that's the tough part about this league, and that's why the NFL stands for not for long.
That's also a bigger picture about how it speaks to Belichick and how he ran his team so long. And we could do a whole nother segment about
I agree. There's some dynamics in there that are really, really incredible, and it takes some big balls to, Belichick had him, man. I mean, I admire him, and he's going to go down as one of the greatest coaches in NFL history. For what he was able to do and what he was able to accomplish. But he saw something in Brady and was willing to take that chance and alienate, just like you talked about, a lot of people just like me and you, basically that thought he should have gotten a fair shake, and he was willing to stand there and take the heat. I admire that.
Have to. All right, so the next thing I want to make sure we get to, because we're getting at almost 30 minutes here, our other UDFA darling, Lan Larison.
We love this guy.
We are obsessed, equally, I'd say, obsessed with Efton Chism as we are Lan Larison. I mean, again, I could play his highlight tape right now, and it's equally as impressive. This guy is a complete bulldozer, a low center of gravity, does not go down. First contact, second contact, you name it. His yards after contact, I think, was like 946 yards.
You know who he reminds me of, Joe?
Who?
Steve Whitehead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
He came from a Division II school in like South Dakota.
Yeah.
And he reminds me of him. And it's funny you say that, because we would watch him in the games, and this guy is a bronc. He would ride horses, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, he's a steer wrangler.
Yeah, he was a bronc buster, whatever the hell it was, in Caldwell, Idaho, and so you're worried about a linebacker coming over when you got the horses and bulls trying to stomp your brains in the ground. That's nothing. So this dude has got mental acumen. He's tough. He's 6 foot, about 215. He's got a low center of gravity. He's fast, and he kind of reminds me of that, kind of person, a Whitehead in terms of his ability to take contact, continue to go. He's slow to the hole, but he's quick through it. He's got really good hands too out of the backfield. So, in terms of for running backs, in terms of catches and yards and touchdowns out of the backfield. So the guy made 4 first-team All-American teams and was the Big Sky Player of the Year in 2023. And they've had some pretty good dudes come through that league, and he is as good as anybody I've seen in a long, long time. I don't know if you remember a guy named Tywan Jones. He came and he played for Buffalo. I don't know if he's still on Buffalo's team. He's been in the league 11.
Yeah, it's more of a scat back, but he was.
Tywan was faster because he was a 4.4, 4.38 guy, where Larison's probably a 4.45, type guy, but a lot more physical. So he can break tackles, but he can also bounce and take it to the house. And you got 2 unrestricted free agents in Chisholm and Larison, in my opinion, that are as good a gets as anybody in the NFL has gotten this year in terms of their ability to make a team, and not only make a team, but play for that team.
So we think, even though it's a lower level of competition, this guy has all the traits and skill set to translate to the NFL. Do you believe that?
I'm not a lower level of competition guy, because Walter Payton came from that level. So
I agree. I don't need to nitpick the competition. It's just the general consensus that they say.
So did Bradshaw back in the day. There are a lot of freaking dudes that have come from the FCS level just because, and again, it's the same thing I had a chip on my shoulder when I came from junior college to college. These guys are laughing at me going, you can't play. And I knock their, doinks into the dirt and go, yeah, dude, I can. I just wasn't ready for it out of high school, but I'm ready now and I'm taking your spot. So you got guys out there. That's what's so impressive about scouting, is being able to find those hidden gems. And I will take my hat and tip it to New England, because you have done as good a job as any NFL team, in my opinion, in this country at finding those gems. Kudos.
I like your opinion.
And honestly, I think when you talk about taking jobs, and Mike and I have talked about this quite a bit, Ramondre Stevenson, to me, he's a great ball player. He catches the ball well, but he doesn't do much with after he catches the ball. And so, to me, I think he's pigeonholed himself into a LeGarrette Blount type role, or at best, Derrick Henry. Even Derrick Henry catches the ball and does something with it more than him. So I don't know. I feel like between Lan, Travion Henderson, and Antonio Gibson, you got 3 players there that can do it all. Antonio Gibson's no slouch. I mean, Antonio Gibson can run between the tackles, and he can catch the ball and go 50 yards to the house. So I don't know. I like those 3 backs more than I do Ramondre this year. Now we'll see, right? Ramondre has a chip on his shoulder too. He fumbled the ball 7 times last year. They drafted Travion Henderson, right? So he's going to have some fire under him too. So we'll see. And our offensive line's a lot better. So, but I don't know. I like 4 backs. Give me 4 backs. This league is very hard to get through all these games healthy, 1. And then 2, if Ramondre fumbles, I mean, I could see Lan Larison getting a first down roll.
Exactly. And you really need 4 solid backs, because 3 of those guys are going to be your special teams beasts. running down a kick, coverage, punt coverage, all that stuff. Your wide receivers, your DBs, those are your special team, your linebackers. Those are the guys that have to step up. And that's, if you're going to make a team in the National Football League, you better be damn good on special teams.
Right.
Well, you got Chisholm. He's done everything from hold extra points and field goals to return punts and kicks. He's thrown touchdown passes. He's caught touchdown passes. He's run the ball. Larison's done the same thing. He was an absolute beast on kick returns and all the things, catching the ball in the backfield. Kyle Williams can do the same thing. He can return punts and kicks and also catch the football, and do things because he's one of those guys that's explosive, as well. So I really like what you guys are doing, which pains me because, right behind you, 6-time Super Bowl champs. Spread the wealth a little bit. Seahawks.
I know.
Are you a Seahawks fan?
I mean, how about sharing it with some of the teams that, haven't won it ever? But
You're not
that's
wrong.
good programs, and that's why good, NFL teams have the scouting that they have, and that's why it's a testament to your guys for going out there and finding the Larisons, the Williams, and the Chisholms of the world to come in.
It's optimistic for us because it's a brand new staff, personnel, coaching, every which way, and the guys they brought in all make an incredible amount of sense to us, which is why we want to talk about these guys because we think they're going to make the roster. So, yes, that's why we're pretty high on the current regime. We don't know how that's going to look, but we're fascinated by these bubble guys that we think that are going to make the roster. So it's like incredible insight that you're giving us, someone that's actually personally scouted these guys and
Absolutely.
looked at them. I can do a rough scouting report on anybody, but these guys know the actual juice, so he knows what it brings to the table. If he says somebody can make an NFL roster, I believe it.
Absolutely.
So I'm walking out of here knowing for a fact that our opinion is right because
Yeah, validated a little bit,
he
right?
thinks that
Yeah, damn right, Joe and Mike. I'm validating you guys big time. The other thing, too, you look at the money that both Chisholm and Larison received as undrafted free agents that are guaranteed.
big.
That's another thing. And
Oh, yeah.
let's face it, they saved money not slotting these guys in the 6th or 7th round. So the fact that they were able to slide through, they could come back with a larger bonus, which tells me they felt that both of those guys were draft worthy.
It was a bidding war.
I think that's an important thing to look at as well.
There was
100%.
a bidding war involved, which means they had to outbid several teams, which means they're more inclined to keep these guys around. And that makes a lot more sense.
And you can't practice squad them because now someone's going to steal them. So you try to hide your Efton Chisms and your Lan Larisons, and even our buddies C.J. Dupree, and there's a few guys, Brock Lampy. I mean, there's guys that we paid decent money, 100, 200, 250K. Jack Conley, the BC, the tackle guard swing guy. So yeah, I think that they're putting their money where their mouth is. That Kraft has done a great job. I think over the last 2 years, he's had a lot of cap space.
Yeah.
And I think now that he's got Vrabel, Elliott Wolf, he's got, this dream team of a scouting. I mean, obviously they crushed the draft.
They're picking the right guys.
And so they're now putting their money where their mouth is. They're like, you know what? We're done with losing. We lost the past 5 years. I know that's again, we won't go to other teams and talk about them, but for Bob Kraft, all he knows is winning at this point.
Yes.
So he doesn't
bringing in the right
accept
kind of
it.
guys.
Yeah, he
Well,
doesn't
that's an
accept it.
important thing to have an owner that understands that, and Kraft has done a remarkable job, taking
Yeah,
this program
he's
going
good.
back to when Drew first started. That was a miserable football team when he walked on that field originally, and he got into the Super Bowl, and he didn't win it when he started, but then they won it, when Brady had the opportunity, and then you guys have really been the pantheon, from that perspective. Now Kansas City's kind of replaced, you just from that, that moniker.
For sure. The prestige.
It was the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it was the 49ers, and it was Dallas. And, so you see this change that comes in. And it's interesting, too, because now you're down, if I remember correctly, to 2 preseason games. We had 5.
Yep.
We had 5.
Wow.
We were playing for 5 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
We got a lot more playing time in the preseason than these kids are going to get. If they can get in the first half of the first game, that'll tell you something right there. And if they can do some things to, be seen on film, because you're not going to have the opportunity in the preseason that we had. So if we got caught, there was enough film on us that guys would pick us up and, dump us onto another team. And so that's the hard part for the rookies coming in is they don't have any film yet in the NFL. They've got to get an opportunity to get on.
Your exhibition games back in the 80s were full-on games.
Just dog fights.
I remember Jerry Rice talking about the exhibition season when you had 6 preseason games. He said it felt like you already played a whole season before you even got to the actual regular
These
season.
guys are fighting for the lives.
So
they're fighting for paychecks.
The grind was just so much. It was so different.
Oh, that's halfway through. That's 6 games is halfway through a college season. You guys are playing, what is it, with the two, and is it 18 regular season or is it 17?
17. They're going to go to 18 soon, though. Next year it'll be 18.
Football games. You got basically 7 more than you normally play in college at a much higher level. You know, I mean, I had 15 my senior year because we had a bowl game and then 2 all-star games. You know, some of these guys, I mean, it's insane to see, you know, the level. And then an NFL game is probably 3 college games. You know, in terms of the beating that you take physically because of how big and strong and fast, you know, the players are at this level now. It's just incredible, honestly.
Yeah, it's really crazy. I do have one. I came up with a hot take right before we came on that I want to see if you have any input on. I was telling Joe that Efton Chism ran a 4.71 in the 40, and I said if he ran a 4.51, he would have been drafted in the 4th or 5th round. Do you think that makes any sense at all, or am I just way out of bounds?
Well, I was a 5th rounder. I'll give you my numbers. I was a 4.48 40 guy at 210 pounds. I could squat 500, clean 400, and bench 385. Okay, and I had a 32-inch vertical. Now I can't even bench a 12-ounce beverage. But I got drafted because those were good numbers. I had really good numbers, and I played well in the All-Star games, and I, you know, finished off. You know, like them, we had All-American honors too. We had all of that other stuff, but none of that means anything to the NFL guys. They want to see your physical numbers. So you're exactly right. Kyle Williams, you know, basically didn't have, you know, he was pretty beat up. And so for him to run a 4.4 and come out, you know, at the end of the season, I mean, he had a great Holiday Bowl against Syracuse. And he was pulling away. Everybody that you watch him run up against, he would pull away from. And Travis Hunter is a classic example of that. And that's a 4.4, 4.38 guy. And Williams is pulling away from the dude. So Chisholm's in the same boat. If he would have had even a 4.6 or a high 4.58, he's getting drafted, you know, anywhere between probably 5 and 7, in my opinion.
I agree.
So that's where the numbers, you know, if you have the numbers, they translate well. If you don't, you have to overcome that. That's why I'm really happy for Efton to get into a camp. Because even if things don't work out, and I hope that's not the case, he'll end up playing the CFL and he'll be a 15-year vet up there. And
he's going to be on somebody's roster. He
won't be denied. You can already tell. I mean,
the movement skills are just—they're off the next level. You can't teach it.
I have a graphic. Hold on, let me see if I can pull it up real quick. Every single beat writer. Hold on, I just want to. If I can get this mouse to work. Oh.
You got beat writers like.
Hold on. There's one overlay. Just want to bring this up real quick.
I would have shut down power to half the city if I tried to, you know, mess with the, you know, the equipment there. So good for you guys.
I'm with you. That's why I'm on this side. He's doing all that stuff.
There have been a lot of buzzing and fizzing and burping going on there.
The one thing I wanted to bring up real quick was this right here. So this is a good call out. My buddy ZB, he does a lot of scouting. He breaks down a lot of film of receivers. But he called out for Efton Chism here. He had a 500 senior dominator, so he's 50% of the offense, 3.45 senior yards per reception or per route run. And he called him out to the Pats in January of this year. So he made the call out and said he's the perfect Patriots receiver.
He's the perfect.
Well, that's the Senior Bowl that you're looking at right there. That's the Senior Bowl where he kind of jumped off the page.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody could cover him.
No.
And again, so then basically he was pretty beat up. You know, let's face it, he was 65% of Eastern Washington's offense.
Yep.
By the end of the year, that body is trashed, and you're not going to be able to run, you know, great numbers. It takes a while, you know. It usually used to take me 4 to 5 weeks at the end of the season where I could get back where I felt like I was kind of normal again. You know, the NFL is even worse. It's probably closer to 2 months. So just the physical toll that you take, you know, from that perspective, and especially as a receiver, because you got idiots like me coming after him to try to tear him in half. But what you notice about Efton, his upper body stays pretty straight up and down. His lower body has such good leverage. He stays so low to the ground. He's hard to read. That's why he makes guys miss, because
people usually read the shoulder pads, which is wrong. You're supposed to read the hips.
Right.
But if they're reading this guy's shoulder pads, they're going to get juked out every time.
You're not reading shoulder pads. You're reading belly button. You
There
know,
you go.
and
He should be
basically-
Reed Belly,
Should be
but sometimes
Reed
I don't know
Belly,
what these
right.
people are doing.
well, the difference between Efton and Kyle Williams is then Kyle, with his speed, can blow by you. So, Efton's got to make the wiggle. He's got to get that space, and that's why the timing with the quarterbacks are going to be important for him, where Kyle is going to be an acquired taste, where he's going to get open probably large, farther downfield, because he's got the speed to kind of take the top end of the defense off. So you have two different, receivers from that perspective, one with the wiggle in the middle, one with the speed on the outside. So, let's just say that you've got Edelman in the middle and you got Randy Moss on the outside. It's just Kyle's not 6'4" like Randy was. And Randy
he's more like a Steve Smith type. And
there you go. That's a perfect example. I love that. It's a great comparison.
Right. And actually, Kyle Williams at the Senior Bowl had the highest miles per. He was clocked at 22 miles per hour. I think 22 and change. And so he was the fastest receiver in the whole Senior Bowl. So I don't buy the 4.4 speed as far as like the whole story. I think his top end speed is, when the ball's in the air or when he's got to run away from defenders. That's when speed matters, right? On a 40 clock time, it's really, it only tells one part of the story.
Yeah, I tried to get up to 22 miles an hour in my Segway and then step off it. That didn't end up very well for me.
Oh, good Lord.
We give you credit.
Don't do that. That's a stupid move. You get a lot of road rash there.
So tell us about Kyle Williams. We've been talking about Kyle Williams. Tell us about what you've seen out of him. Why do you think he's going to be a special Patriot?
Love that kid. And he's overcome adversity and just he's one of those guys that's self-made, has just worked for everything that he's got. And you find these overachievers are all kind of cut out of the same cloth. And so, good young man. He came out of California. He was down, I think, in Santa Monica Cathedral or one of the places down there. Went to UNLV, played, but wasn't really kind of the number one guy there. Had a decent year, and then transferred to WSU. Because he saw they were running kind of the air raid, and really came in and really blossomed his senior year. He became the go-to guy. And I just, all you have to do is just go look at the Holiday Bowl against Syracuse when they were so undermanned. They had 35 guys that left that football team. Half the coaching staff, bailed and went to Wake Forest. Very disappointed how Jake Dickert handled that transition. But some of the coaches stayed around. Let Zevi Eckhouse, who's an Orthodox Jew, is the quarterback, is a backup. Great kid. In fact, he had to get special dispensation to basically play on Saturdays.
Yeah, you don't see
because
that.
Wow.
it's like the Mormons, you're not supposed to play on Sunday. Catholics, you can play, just ask for forgiveness at confession, you're okay. And I have to do that a lot because I swear way too much, and then I spend a lot of time with our
You've
Father.
done great.
You've done a great job, Paul.
I've been wanting to swear too. Trust me.
We wouldn't have minded.
We wouldn't mind it. It's okay.
But I mean,
You're very articulate.
Kyle,
So you're good.
Kyle does a great job he's a great game film guy. He's really good at finding holes. He continues to run routes and always trying to get himself open. And he develops a relationship with the quarterbacks because he had John Mateer, who was his guy, who ended up transferring to Oklahoma. He got a $3.5 million 2-year deal. So he got $7 million to go play for the Sooners. That was a little larger than our NIL could handle, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We lose those guys. We lost Cam Ward to Miami, but he had graduated, so he was a great, grad transfer. And we lost the guy that led the nation in total touchdowns in John Mateer to Oklahoma. But Kyle stayed, and played great. And that was Zevi's only start, because he only played 4 games and redshirted. He'll be the starting quarterback for Washington State this coming up fall. He's a senior. So I thought Kyle really represented well. He was a great leader. He caught the football. He basically got open. There wasn't anybody that could cover him. In fact, in the Wyoming game that they lost, he was open more than 7-11. He was open 24/7, 365, and they couldn't get him the freaking football. And they ended up losing that game because of it. And so I think Kyle took note of that and wanted to make sure he could have left. He didn't have to play in the Holiday Bowl like a lot of people opt out on. But
He did. He chose to.
And you saw the difference. And that's a character guy. Again, a Larison, a Chisholm, a Williams. Those are the kind of people that New England's getting, and that's why you guys are going to be back winning football.
The guys that we want around, I'll tell you that much.
It's really you can totally see Mike Vrabel put that in like the bullets, right?
Character counts.
Character,
Yes.
leader, smart person, right? All these picks, Jared Wilson, Craig Woodson, all these guys that we picked all had leadership qualities. All were very vocal, no nonsense guys. I think the only one that I heard anything potentially bad about was Braden Swinson. And they basically said, he's kind of a know-it-all, but okay, great. He's a 5th-round pick that we stole. That the guy should have been a 3rd-round pick. But Joshua Farmer, I mean, all these guys they picked were all high character, all academic, all like high,
and these guys
leader
fit that
guys.
mold.
By the way, just an FYI, a little note, I did go 8 picks higher than Shadir Sanders did, so that makes me feel good.
There you go.
That's
all right.
awesome.
That sounds.
And I didn't have a father like he had that had the juice that Dion had. So I consider that a win for the Sorensen family.
Did that help him or hurt him, though? That's the question.
Well, not the father's acumen, but all the BS that went around with that circus. I think they didn't. And he went in and laid a complete egg with the New York Giants. They didn't want to have anything to do with him because he came in. He was so arrogant. He didn't study the playbook. He wouldn't answer any of the questions, and they just said, "We're out. I'm tapping out. We don't want to."
There were multiple reports like that.
And when that information gets out, boy, you get
over,
and you drop, and you saw it. He was a 1st-round pick. He went in the 5th. It's crazy.
That's all
as high as number 3, and then he interviews, and it just plummets. So you
got Dylan Gabriel. You got Dylan Gabriel going before him. Like, oh my Lord,
you got to be a pro,
Well, and
one more question I want to ask you really quick. I don't want to get into it, but how has NIL affected your program over there? Is it really just on its head or what?
If you're not a top 40 team, you're dead. I mean,
Is that right?
Okay, I'll just give you the story.
Please.
This is how the NIL started at Washington State. I had $10,000. I had 10 defensive backs who were going to give $1,000 each. And so I called up the defensive back coach and I said, "Hey man, I get $10,000. I don't know how to do this. What do you want to do?" And he goes, "Well, why don't you go talk to Dickert, and see what he wants to do. Maybe we can, we'll figure something out." I go, "Remember, I'd like to have a go with defensive backs because they're all DBs that are donating." Anyway, so then I get a call from Dickert, and then little Morris, who was the head coach at North Texas, he left, and he remembered Cam Ward. When Cam was down there, he recruited him because he was at Incarnate Word, and then came up and became the offensive coordinator under Leach, and then also it was under Rolovich, and then Rolovich got fired because of the shot thing. And then he ended up taking over the offensive coordinator position. And he goes, "Hey, and he was the guy that brought in both Cam Ward and also John Mateer. So we got $10,000. Anyway, there's 3 schools, Oklahoma, I think it was Mississippi, Houston, and West Virginia that were all 75 to 100,000 plus a car and all the other things. We got $10,000. So here's the deal. We negotiate. We didn't even have an NIL, but we have this thing called Cougs First, which was a business group that we've had for 15 years. And so we were all on the board of directors. So I went back to them, and Jack Thompson, the throwing Samoan, he played for Cincinnati and Tampa Bay, and basically he's a guy that, I've looked up to. He's a couple years older than me. I said, "Hey, what do we do on this?" Because they want to try to bring this quarterback guy in, and they want to use the money that I got to go to defensive backs to start, this thing. So we negotiated a $100,000 package. $50,000 was cash. $10,000 went to the family so that they could fly in. Okay. He got a truck, like a Tahoe or a AMC 4-door, it's worth $25,000. And he got a 2-bedroom furnished apartment. So he saved another $25,000 on, basically on his housing thing. So the whole package came out to be about $110,000.
My Lord.
And he decided to come to Washington State. That was our first deal. Then we created the Cougar Collective off that, and we'll be between 5 and 10 million this year, which is scratch compared to what Oregon spent last year, which was 50 million.
Oh my God.
That's what NIL is doing to college football. There is
do you
no
see any light at the end of the tunnel?
There is no ground rules, and there's no guidelines right now.
It's the Wild West.
It's free agency with no collective bargaining. It's
exactly
right.
Well, to answer your question, we're screwed.
Yeah,
so
how can
we because we can't compete. But we're trying hard to fight and build a culture and try to hang in there. And Washington State's always been a have-not school anyway. So we're used to it, but it still pisses us off because we get good quarterbacks and good
program goes out the window.
Come in and throw money at them, and that's what pisses us off. So,
they got to cap it, right? They got to set up some kind of cap that works for everybody.
Well, they're doing something now that they've got that. If they get the settlement through the NCAA approved, it's sitting in front of a judge and it hasn't been approved yet. You're going to have $20 million on a revenue share that each school can go up to $20 million on it. Washington State will probably do like 10, and then $5 million will go into scholarships, but it has to be spread out equally because of Title IX, and $5 million will go back into NIL, which has to be spread out equally. So they'll always have collectives on the outside because football, men's and women's basketball are really the kings, from the financial side. So we've been right in the middle of this whole thing right from the get-go, and it's dirty. It sucks. It's the first thing you hear from a kid is, "Hey, how much are you going to pay me?" We go, "We're not paying you a damn thing."
Right. It's just bottom line oriented. That's all they look at.
Yeah. So we're not going to do any of that stuff until you figure out, where you want to be. We're not in that realm. So
culture, tradition, and program goes out the window.
Well,
no
Michael
culture,
Irvin,
they don't care about that.
I think Michael Irvin made a statement that I think is so prophetic. He said, when we were in high school, we did everything we could to get to college so that we could do everything that we can to get to the pros. I played hurt. I played beat up. I did whatever I can. He goes, now these kids are getting paid starting in high school. Guess what? You're not going to have the same motivated kid in the National Football League. It's changing the dynamics of the personalities of these kids because they're getting paid so early.
Entitlement, yeah.
It's sad. And so, to be honest, I think it's great for the players, good for them. I mean, I got a Domino's coupon for $5 off that was expired. That was my end.
So do you think the NCAA is going to get disbanded?
I would have been $1 million dude back in the day, and I'm going.
Right?
No,
but he wouldn't be able to talk to you now, though, Paul. You would.
I'd probably be bankrupt, and you'll see me on the corner and say, "We'll work for food," So
Paul, is this the beginning of the end for the NCAA? Is
yes.
They going to stay together, or are they going to break it up?
I think the NCAA is going to implode, and I think you're going to see a power shift with the Big Ten and the SEC, and they're going to go off and do their own thing. And if the NFL was smart, they would make it NFL light, and they'd come in and they would basically have feeder schools, whatever that happens to be, and have their players come in, play for a couple years. If the NFL wanted to handle this whole thing, they would open up the draft at 18-year-old kids. But you know what? An 18-year-old kid is not ready for the National Football League. Maybe in baseball, maybe in the NBA, but not the NFL. No way.
No, you're 100% right. But Goodell, Goodell's thought about it. Goodell, it's at the very least, his people have thought about it.
He's trying to control everything.
Yeah, 100%.
So you'll have your 40 teams break off. They'll have a super conference, and then the rest of us will go and do what we do and get back to regional play and stop having the Cal and Stanfords travel to the ACC and the USCs and UCLAs go to the Rutgers and the the Northwesterns and all that crap of the world. I mean, get back to regional play where it should be and have your own rivals. And that's the thing that pisses us off is both watching
people are playing across country. Nobody has a rivalry anymore.
No. I mean, we played Washington in September. Who cares?
Yeah.
It's not the rivalry that it used to be because they're playing in a different league now. So I feel bad for college football because they lost a tradition. And that was so much fun. That was the thing for me. And as a broadcaster that I've been a part of for 40 plus years, to be able to go to the big house in Ohio State and LSU and Alabama and all these different places and do games and see the pageantry. It's different than the NFL, but now it's NFL light. And it sucks.
Yeah,
it really does.
It does. It's unfortunate. Well, Paul, thank you so much for joining us. It's been with the audio issues, with the ambulances.
You've been a trooper.
We're testing all of our metal here, but we make it through it. Thank you so much for coming on. Like I said, you'll be getting some swag in the mail. Don't worry about it, Paul. Thank you again.
Joe and Mike, you made me a semi-New England Patriots fan through you guys. I really do hope those three dudes get a great shot and get a chance to show what they can do. And I think they'll really help the Patriots down the road, and you'll have a fan in yours.
As do we. Yeah, your insight has been second to none, man. This has been a really productive and informative conversation. We really appreciate it.
Just remember the difference between a brown noser and a shithead is depth perception. Never forget.
Well, if you met me in person, you'd have a different idea. But for right now, we really appreciate having you on the show.
My honor, fellas.
Paul, maybe you'll come out to a game sometime.
Yeah, it's tough because I usually work in the fall. I'm going to go to the Washington State Ole Miss game because we got to buy. Eastern's got to buy that weekend. My son lives in Nashville, so I'm going to fly into Nashville, and we're going to drive down and go watch the Cougars and the Rebels play because I've always wanted to go to the Grove or not, go to their tailgating deal because it's so massive. It's one of the few places I've been. So that's a bucket list for me. But one of these days, Yeah, I'd like to come back and, see you guys with your new stadium and all the fun stuff going on. That would be cool.
I will stream one of his broadcasts and then I'll give him feedback, just brown nosing him.
Please.
Just rose-colored glasses telling him how awesome.
You'll get our listenership up to 4 if you do that. So thank you.
I love it.
We're all about it. It's okay. I judge myself and no others, so who cares?
Well, reach out anytime, fellas. It was truly my honor and really had a blast talking football with you here in June. It's really cool and really excited for those guys. I think you're going to enjoy watching them play.
Awesome. Thanks again, Paul. And thanks everyone for tuning in.
Hey, cheers.
LFG, baby.
LFG.
Let's do it.